Hello and welcome to another Millennial Minute. I'm your host, Julia Sun. Today's question, should all political offices have term limits? You've already heard from our guest podcast host, Christian Watson, and Hilary Levey Friedman, author of Here She Is. Hey guys, welcome to the show. Look, we don't want our politicians to stay forever, but at the same time, we also don't want them to stay for, say, 2 seconds and get nothing done. So, do elections as they are right now offer enough opportunities for candidate turnovers? Hilary?
Well, elections are actually really expensive for individuals. You have to raise lots of money. And so there are these barriers that exist that might make it hard for some people to take on an incumbent. And so, if there was a way to lift those barriers, that would be helpful. But otherwise, an incumbency is super powerful in many ways, not just the experience, but also connections to those donor dollars that you need to make a campaign work.
Christian, what do you think?
Well, I think that, if money in politics is the sort of thing here that we're saying might be necessary to evoke a need for term limits, that's not, term limits will not get rid of that. You will have SuperPACs and groups that support certain candidates, and if a particular candidate in a particular seat goes away after, say, 2-term limits, after 2 terms as opposed to like 4 terms or 5 terms, you'll still have the same principle being forwarded in the halls of Congress. Really, what this is just doing, it's putting a placebo in front of our eyes and making us feel as if we've made someone who shouldn't be there for a certain period of time not be there. And while reality, it's not doing anything to actually affect the change that term limits suppose that they're affecting.
In that case, Christian, do you think the current system is working?
Well, perhaps I think that people themselves are not, their minds are not working right. And what I mean by that is that people oftentimes like to derelict responsibility, sort of psychological phenomenon. We don't want to take responsibility for our own political well-beings ourselves. And so what do? We try to assign it to some person or something, whether it's a president, whether it's a senator, whether it's a group, but we don't look at ourselves and ask ourselves, what can I do to continue the republic? What can I do to continue the American experiment? Instead, we defer responsibility to lazy things like term limits, and that's just not a good thing if we want to actually continue or make the system better.
Got it. Hilary, you said you do believe in term limits. Then what do you think is the ideal length of time for somebody to be in office?
Well, as I mentioned, the presidency has 2 terms. If you think about the U.S. Senate, each term is 6 years. So 2 to 3 terms. 18 years is an awfully long time to be in the same position. And so that's more than enough time to figure out how the system works and to get things done and to produce new leaders. So I think one of the things when we think about term limits is we do have to be building the bench of leadership, but through term limits, that's also a way to cultivate new leaders too.
Yeah, well, the flip side of that is if you have an 8-year term limit, some legislations would not pass. What do you say to that?
Well, or because people, don't have to face an electorate at that exact moment, there's more political courage and as opposed to having a lame duck session. So there's a variety of ways that could go in particular. But as I said, you really need time to learn how whatever chamber you're in, how that works. That's both at the federal level and at the state level.
Christian, you said ultimately it's up to the people to monitor these politicians and how long they're in the office. Can you give me some breakdowns of what do you think people should look for when monitoring these politicians they elect?
Well, absolutely. And before I get that, let's start with the principle. The word republic comes from the Latin phrase res publica, which simply means for or to the public. So the idea of a republic, especially an American republic, was built upon direct participation of the people in conjunction with the principles enshrined in our Declaration of Independence, enshrined in the Constitution. So that would be the main thing to look at. Does the candidate follow those things? But in a more practical sense, if you elected a candidate who promised to do plan A or plan B, and they've defaulted on that, your opportunity to give them a term limit comes when the next vote comes around. You don't need to have a legislative imposition to enact your own responsibility to respond and hold candidates accountable for the promises they made and may not have kept or have kept. So, simply making sure candidates are consistent with what they said and consistent with their plans and their ideology would be good. But ultimately, I would like everyone to evaluate politicians on the basis of, do they adhere to the Constitution and do they adhere to the principles of individual rights? If not, that's your term limit right there. Just vote them out.
All right, Hilary and Christian, thank you for being here. Great discussion. And thank you for watching Millennial Minute. I'm Julia Sun. I'll see you back here next time.